Hey, here with Kevin Clark. This is Football Omaha Productions. Kevin, thanks for a few minutes.
I'm glad to be here.
So you are one of the best interviewers in all of sports media. Yes, it's true. We all know. You've talked to a lot of people in football, a lot of people about Kyle Shanahan. What is the best Kyle Shanahan nugget that you have picked up from all the people you've talked to?
Wow. Okay, well, I would start with Richard Sherman, who came on my show at The Ringer 2 years ago, and said that one thing that Shanahan does, and you guys know this, is that he understands defensive rules better than anybody and then breaks them. And one of the things that he was really good at was working with Dan Quinn, understanding the old Seahawks cover 3, and understanding how to absolutely obliterate those. And that basically the Seahawks had to change their rules because Kyle Shanahan knew the old cover 3 rules, the Legion of Boom rules, so well. And I think that just shows you when a defense is like changing everything they do because of one guy, that just shows you he's mastered offense. And I just love it. One of the genres we've gotten good at, and we Mahomes stories are like this, and Lamar Jackson stories are like this, but there's only maybe a handful of guys in the NFL where you can, if a guy's played with a guy, played under a guy, coached with him, you just say, hey, give me a story about this guy. Kyle Shanahan's on a very short list of guys. You're always going to get a good story.
One of the things I picked up from, I think, your interview with Peyton Manning, is he said if he could play for anybody, he would play for Kyle Shanahan. Yeah,
and he almost did, because he watched 2 hours of film with him in Washington. That would have not been good for Niners fans if Peyton Manning got to Washington. The entire world changes from there. Maybe Kyle's in Washington, I'm getting promoted from his dad. I don't know. You guys don't want to think about it. But I think that there's such a respect there, and he makes life so easy on his quarterbacks, and you can just see it in the stats. Brock Purdy, I think, has done a great job executing the offense, but it's still the best offense in football. And I think that we shouldn't lose sight of how historic, and we always talk about, and he needs a Super Bowl in order to get into the Pantheon, but we always talk about historic seasons for quarterbacks and defensive ends and receivers, and we don't do it for coaches. And I think we're seeing greatness with Kyle Shanahan from a play calling perspective.
I feel like Kyle has more to gain and more to lose on Sunday than anybody else, especially for the 49ers.
Yeah.
Because if he loses, it's going to be, why are we giving this guy so much love? He never wins the big one. He choked again in the Super Bowl. But if he wins, all the stuff that we would use against him, like, well, you always call him a genius. Look at all his coaching. All his other coaches are better than he is. It now becomes an asset if he wins a championship.
100%. I mean, like, the media is going to default to choker or can't win the big one, because they always do, because how many guys have been can't win the big one until they can?
Right.
Peyton Manning being a great example. No one ever talks about that stuff. There are so many guys where it's like, oh, this guy can't do it in the postseason or whatever, and it's really just time. The reason we don't view everybody in the past as a choker is because they got 20 years to figure it out. Kyle hasn't gotten that. I think Kyle will win a Super Bowl. I don't know if it'll be this Sunday, but I do agree. You want to talk about the poisonous, or I don't know what you want to call it, Purdy discourse. The Shanahan discourse, if they lose this game Sunday, is going to be wild.
At some level, he's got to be thinking about that on the sidelines at some point, I feel like.
I hope he doesn't let it creep into his head. And just, Steve Young was on my show earlier today, and we were talking about not pressing in those situations and understanding not to change your identity. We're talking about Lamar Jackson in particular, but Bill Walsh always said there's no such thing as rising to the occasion. They're just executing normally when everybody else loses their heads. I think Kyle would do well to read the score, takes care of itself before Sunday's game, because I think there's going to be a lot of doubts, emotions, whatever you want to call it, creeping in because of that.
Let's flip it over to the Chiefs really quickly.
Yeah.
Have you had the chance to interview Mahomes?
Yeah, a handful of times in training camp for print. I've never done it on camera. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy this generation, and I haven't spent much time around Brock Purdy, but this generation of young quarterbacks, they're not as guarded as maybe the Brady, Matt Ryan generation. And I think they answer the question. They're really cool. And so Mahomes is blunt and honest about, we've got some wild chants going on back here.
Don't know
it's Cam Newton. Cam Newton chanting.
Thanks, Cam. He just doesn't want us to talk about Brock Purdy.
Yeah, exactly. But it was interesting because I think that the one thing Mahomes is good at, he's honest as a person, but he's also honest in his game. And he'll say, look, listen, I'd love to be able to keep throwing against cover 2 and these 2 eye shells. I'm just going to change because I'm not getting the results I need.
Yep.
He's a harsh self-evaluator, and I think that his honesty to himself is one of his best attributes.
Last question. Sunday night, is Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes raising the trophy with their third Super Bowl title, vaulting them to a new stratosphere in the history of the NFL, or does Kyle Shanahan finally get over the hump?
No, I think it's going to be the Chiefs. And part of it is just I can't say Mahomes is in his MJ era and all this stuff and then say, oh, by the way, he's going to lose on Sunday. So I'm going to go 28-21 Chiefs.
Well, now you can never come on the show again. Kevin Clark, Omaha Productions, thank you so much for the time.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you. All right.